Hello and welcome to the Hope Recovery Podcast. I'm your host, Greg Schmalhofer, and this is episode number 35. So thank you very much for joining me today on the Hope Recovery Podcast. This episode today is a podcast on step 2 of the 12 steps of recovery. And in this episode, I attempt to present the main principles that are included in step 2. There is much that can be said for each step of recovery, and many books and lessons have been written for the 12 steps of recovery. Also, I certainly encourage you to read the books of AA and NA for their guidance regarding each of the 12 steps of recovery as the main founders of the 12 steps of recovery. The title of the episode today then is simply Step 2 of Recovery. A power greater than ourselves. Step 2 of recovery, as given by Narcotics Anonymous, states it this way: we came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. Step 2 is all about power, but specifically about a power greater than ourselves. And this step 2 follows on from step 1, which also talks about power. But in step 1, we admitted we were powerless over our addiction. And as you recall, step 1 states, we admitted that we were powerless over our addiction, that our lives had become unmanageable. So briefly, in step 1, we admitted we were powerless over our addiction. And this is indeed a tremendous admission, to acknowledge that we are powerless over our addiction. And for anyone in addiction, this is a great truth to acknowledge and to embrace. To embrace as being true for you that you are powerless over your addiction. But step 2 does not leave you there as being powerless. Step 2 talks about a power greater than ourselves, because in our own power and in our own strength, we did not have the power to overcome our addiction. The Alcoholics Anonymous book on page 45 from the chapter We Agnostics talks about this idea of power of both step 1 and step 2 when it states this: our human resources, as marshaled by the will, were not sufficient. They failed utterly. Lack of power, that was our dilemma. We had to find a power by which we could live, and it had to be a power greater than ourselves, obviously. But where and how are we to find this power? Well, that's exactly what this book is all about. Its main object is to enable you to find a power greater than yourself, which will solve your problem. And that's a quote from page 45 of the AA book. There is much to be taken from step 2, but in my view, there are 3 main principles, and in many ways, step 2 takes many important steps of beginning. And also in many ways, step 2 is the beginning of hope as well. The first main principle of step 2 is the beginning of faith, as in we came to believe. In many ways, step 2 is the beginning of faith. It is yet a very small expression of faith, but in some ways, step 2 begins the process of believing. It is not important to clearly understand who this higher power is just yet, but it is important to have faith, to believe that there is somewhere, somehow, a power greater than ourselves. Through the 12 steps of recovery, many millions of people over many decades of time have been successful in recovery. And so even if you simply start with the faith, with believing that all these millions of people that have been successful in recovery are the evidence that there is indeed a power greater than yourself, that is a fine place to start. To believe that there indeed must be a power greater than yourself, and that is where you start. You believe in the power that worked for so many others to be successful in their recovery, and that same power can work for you as well. The second main principle of step 2 is the beginning of accepting a higher power, or a power greater than ourselves. Step 2 is also the beginning of accepting help from a higher power. You are not there just yet, but you are now convinced you need help beyond yourself. You are thoroughly convinced that you do not have the necessary power yourself to be successful in recovery. If you did, you would have been clean and sober a long time ago. But you do believe there is a power greater than yourself that can help you in your recovery. It is okay that right now you're not entirely clear on exactly what this power or this higher power looks like or who he is. But you know that it is only with a higher power, a power greater than yourself, that you can be successful in recovery. And so you do indeed believe that with a power greater than yourself, you can be successful in recovery. And so you continue on. The third main principle of step 2 is the beginning of a return to sanity, as mentioned as could restore us to sanity. Step 1 says that your life had become unmanageable, which is another way of saying your life was in chaos. Your life was falling apart. But it is with step 2 that gives you the hope that this higher power could restore you to sanity, that this higher power could restore your life to sanity. It likely would not be quick or wouldn't be overnight, but this higher power would give you the power to begin to bring sanity into your life. It won't be fast, and it likely will be painful, but with this power greater than yourself, it is possible. Recovery is now possible. Putting these three principles together for step 2, it does indicate that step 2 is very much about hope. These three principles, the beginning of faith, as in we came to believe, and the beginning of accepting a higher power, as in a power greater than ourselves, and lastly, the beginning of a return to sanity, as in could restore us to sanity. This leads me to the Bible passage for step 2, which is from Philippians chapter 4, verse 13, that says, I can do all things through him who strengthens me. Your recovery might seem absolutely impossible to you right now. You may have tried recovery or rehab many, many times, and yet you were still not able to be successful in recovery. But this Bible verse from Philippians 4:13 seems to speak to this very topic, saying, I can do all things, even recover from years of alcohol or drug addiction through him who strengthens me. Consider this passage as you go further in step 2 and even later as you look at the rest of the 12 steps of recovery. And remember the passage, I can do all things through him who strengthens me. Recovery is absolutely possible with a power greater than yourself, with the true higher power. It is with this coming to believe in a power greater than yourself that your life could be restored to sanity. That is indeed hope. Not hope in yourself or even any other person, but hope in a higher power, in a power greater than yourself. That is how you can have true hope, when you put your hope in God, the true higher power. The wording of step 2 is very much an expression of hope. Step 2 of recovery says we came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. That is hope, and it is the beginning of faith as well. I encourage you to embrace this idea of faith. And wherever you are at in faith and in your belief in a higher power and with God, I encourage you to continue to seek to find God. And I believe if you genuinely seek to find God, you will indeed find him. And you will find that this true higher power does indeed have the power to restore your life to sanity and the power to help you to be successful in recovery and even to a brand new life as well. That is what I have for you today. Thank you very much for joining me on the Hope Recovery Podcast. And remember, there is always hope with God. Take care, and God bless you all.